Good morning, my friend. We're opening up. Could you hear me? Could you see me well? This week's parsha starts off in a very interesting way. It doesn't say who's speaking. It says Vayikrah el Moshe. Hashem called to Moshe. Not only that, the aleph of Vayikra is very small. And therefore, since it is small, you could not notice the aleph and just read Vayakar, and Hashem happened upon Moshe. Vayikra means Hashem called out to Moshe, Lashon Chiba, like Rashi says. It's a way of affection. And Vayakar means just happened upon him. I happened to meet you. And this without the Rebbe is going to discuss this idea that in the place where you're expecting it to be the brightest is actually where it's not the brightest. And why is that? And this is really a continuation of what we explained last week, the week before, that Hashem is the opposite of this world, so to speak. When I say the opposite, meaning the way this world runs, Teva, nature, is the opposite how Kedusha runs. That we feel when we have a lot, then we have a lot. When we have a little, then it's nothing. But Kedusha is the opposite. When we have a little, sometimes that's a lot. And let's look inside Vayikra, page Aleph, Hamad Aleph, and Sefer. But it's really a continuation for what we already discussed in Reishis and Shemais. We already have the Mishkan. We already have the aid, like the Alter Rebbe we ended off last week. We didn't discuss it in the Shir, but Alter Rebbe continues in Torah discussing that in Shema Yisrael, the pasuk Shema Yisrael, there's an ayin rabasi and a dalet rabasi. There's a large ayin and a large dalet, and that together spells the word aid, because it's Mishkan ha'edus. That even though it's Pekudei HaMishkan, we explained last week, the Rebbe says Take, it's Pekudei HaMishkan. It's a limited expression, but nevertheless, it's Mishkan ha'edus. Hashem on His own brings to us that we should experience Mishkan ha'edus. Says the Alter Rebbe, Vikra Moshe v'Gomer. And he called to Moshe. Doesn't say who called. Doesn't say Hashem called. And he called. Aleph de Vayikra Zeira. The Aleph in Vayikra is a small Aleph. If you contrast it to Divrei Hayamim, in Divrei Hayamim is where the Torah enumerates the chronology, the history, the Yichusim, like a genealogy chart of who the first person, Adam, that goes Enosh, and Ksiv Adam Aleph Rabasi. Adam is spelled with a big Aleph. And one of the Mefarshim explain why is it with a big Aleph? Because Hashem created the world with an Aleph. And He finished creation with the Aleph. Adam is the last creation that Hashem created on the sixth day. Right before Shabbos, He created Adam after everything was already prepared for Adam. There was food, there was animals, everything he needed. So to symbolize that, it ends off with an Aleph. So how come by Moshe the Aleph is small, and by Adam the Aleph is large? Love and Zet understand this. In other words, when the Aleph is small, there's something missing. Says the Alter Rebbe, we have to look at something else. There's also a missing puzzle in this interaction with Hashem and Moshe after he builds the Mishkan. Specifically, after building the Mishkan, there's a small Aleph by Vayikra, and it doesn't say Vayidaber Hashem, Vayomer Elikim. It doesn't say who's talking, just as Vayikra. So there's information missing. There's Aleph is small, and our sages tell us Vayikra Rabba Perek Aleph Vayikra El Moshe V'Leik Avram. Hashem called to Moshe not like by Avraham. By Avram it says Hashem's name. By Avram Ksiv Vayikra Malach. Sorry. By Avram Ksiv Vayikra Malach Havayel Avram. Hamalach Kerev Adir Medaber. By Avram it says, and the Malach of Hashem called, meaning there was an intermediary, there was something in between Avram and Hashem. But here, Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu, Ani Hu HaKerev, Ani Hu HaMedaber. I'm the one that's calling and I'm the one that's speaking. That's what it says in the Medrash. V'cheinu b'Zohar Parshas Balak, so we have in Kabbalistic literature, in the Zohar it says, Vayikra el Moshe, and he called to Moshe. Says the Zohar, here there's a Chiddush. Kol de Malka v'lo yedeh shlicha achra. It's the voice of the king, the voice of Hashem, and not through a malach, intermediary. That's the case. Why doesn't it say, if it's Hashem, say Vayikra el Moshe? And why doesn't it tell us who's calling? And this is going to be the main idea. Okay, let's do the next question. It says in Parshas Vayikrah in the Zohar, Vayikra al Moshe, v'likomer man hava chuli. Ela b'chalani malacha de bris hava, v'kula b'kush b'chu yitma. Zohar says by Avram, that it says Vayikra Malach Hashem. The Malach Hashem was calling, because he was an intermediary. There's an intermediary. In other words, the Malach is telling Avram, Sarah, you're going to have a child next year. That Malach is not going to be there next year. So it's not the Malach talking. It's the Malach is just Malach Habris. It's a messenger for Hashem, meaning Hashem is communicating a message. But by Moshe, it doesn't say who spoke. The question is, why doesn't it say who spoke on Moshe Rabbeinu? It says the Alter Rebbe, and this is what the Alter Rebbe is going to explain. We ended off last week's parsha that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't able to come to the Yom because he was kvoid, and this is the same nekuda. It's really all the same. It's in other words, a small aleph, and not saying who's speaking is a result of what happened last week's parsha. And this is an interesting thing that it's brought down in Sfarim on the pasuk Yoshas Cheshach Sisrei, which we discussed yesterday. Yoshas Cheshach Sisrei is a very interesting pasuk because that pasuk, the Mefarshim really get confused over it, because at the end of the day, we know that the Eibishter is light, and it's a whole separate discussion of what it is. We can't really get into it because this is really a share on Likutie Torah, but there's some very interesting Mefarshim on it. The Mamish really, goes through this whole discussion and the conclusion, because what happened by the Mishkan? A light didn't come down, a cloud. It says Kvoid Hashem. A cloud from Hashem came down. That's darkness, that's not light. It says Vayikra El Moshe. It doesn't say who spoke, it's darkness. Vayikra with a small aleph, that's darkness. So if Hashem is light and Hashem is resting on the Mishkan, we finished last week, Dr. Rebbe is explaining, it's Eidus L'Bayaylam, that the Mishkan is a testimony that Hashem is resting, so why is it dark? And that really is a question I have in my own life. Isn't it the time that I try the hardest to bring Hashem into my life? I'm struggling and I'm fighting and I'm trying to bring the Ohr Hashem into my life, and that's the darkest part of my life. The darkest time of the journey is specifically when I'm trying to bring Hashem into my life. And sometimes it feels like, the Rebbe is telling you, that's a good question. You have a good question. The Rebbe says, I have the same question. If we just brought the Shekhinah into the Mishkan, why is it a kvoid? Why is it a cloud? And why doesn't it say who's speaking? It's like hiding something. Why is Aleph small? You have a good question. But the answer is going to come from there. The answer to your question is going to come from the question. Previously it says, Moshe was not able to come into the Oyel Moed. Why wasn't he able to come to the Oyel Moed? The reason why it wasn't able to, I just want to say one nekuda, that the Ein Yaakov on Chagiga, brought down from the Minchas Shai, says an very interesting idea about the light when Hashem created the world. He said Adam was created with a big aleph. He says Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Adam Rishon Mesefer Ha'olam Ve'atzeifa Haya. Adam Rishon was from the one end of the world to the other world. Sorry, I have the wrong thing that I want to bring up. That wasn't what I wanted to bring up. I made a mistake. I apologize. Moshe wasn't able to go to the Oyel Moed because the honor was resting on it. The Kveit Hashem Malei Mishkan, and the glory of Hashem filled up the Mishkan. So that symbolizes not light, that symbolizes darkness. A cloud is darkness. Yoshes Cheshech Sisrei is that the clouds are covering the sky. I cannot see. Pirish Taich Alter Rebbe, and Alter Rebbe doesn't say a deeper pshat. It looks like it's dark. It's not dark. Shochan Olav Ha'anam. The cloud is resting on it. The cloud that's resting on the Mishkan, that's indication that's an indication that it's a very, very, very deep and a bright light. That it says, but it's such a light. I don't know if you remember last year. I don't know where you are in the world, but last year in New York City, we had an eclipse. We could look at the sun, and I don't know exactly whether the sun or the moon. One of them was blocking the other, and you could see the sun from behind the moon. So the whole sun was black, just the ring around it. Now, in order to see it, you had to wear special glasses. So my question to you is, those special glasses, did they make that you can see the light, or mean that you should be able to see the light? Obviously, yeah, you're right, see the light. In other words, not always is darkness, a cloud, a symbol of darkness. Could be because the light's so bright. There has to be a filter, or else it's blinding. Since this is the infinite energy of Hashem, which is Soviv Kol Almin, like we explained many times, Soviv Kol Almin, so to speak, is like the mashal we gave, is like cellular waves. Cellular waves are all around the room, and if I hear every single conversation that's happening, every bubby that's screaming, and every husband that's listening to his wife screaming at him, whatever it is, it's going to be too much. It's not possible to be revealed. Not only that, the Gemara says in Megillah today, Mesechus Megillah, today koli lo mishtame, two voices cannot be heard. So if I hear two conversations at the same time, I won't be able to hear the whole conversation. Because no thought could grasp them at all. And you, you're chacham, you have chachma, but not the chachma that we know. Why? Because like the Ram says, by me, there's my brain, there's the knowledge I'm learning, there's before I learned and after I learned. But by the Eibishter, the knowledge and the understanding it, and everything is all one. Regarding this, it says that Hashem puts clouds of darkness. It's dark because you can't grasp it. To explain it, we say Hashem, you are holy, which holy literally means removed, and your name is holy. Even the Bechina of your name is also uplifted. And even the most spiritual world is not relative to Hashem's name at all. Until that the Eibishter is separated from the worlds. David HaMelech said until him, only a ray of Shemai is so powerful that only a ray of Shemai could be contained in the world, in the heaven and the earth. A ha'ara of Shemai. So that's Shimcha Kadosh. What does it mean? Ata Kadosh. Hashem in His glory and His essence, which is much higher than the level of Shemai. In other words, even a ray from Hashem's name, the worlds could accept, but a ray from Hashem Himself, the worlds wouldn't be able to accept. It's like looking at the eclipse without those special glasses. Your eyes could get blinded or get damaged from it. Parshas Vayikrah. This means since they cannot accept it, it's called darkness. So the darkness is not because it's a lacking light, because it's too bright. Because the light is so bright, therefore they cannot contain it. And the ray that they're able to accept is from Shimcha Kadosh. It's called the Ziv Hashchina. In the Rai Mehemna Parshas Pinchas, it says, "The Yashas Chayshach Sisrei Hu Keser Elyon." This level that's so dark that even a ray of it's too bright for anything, any creation, any world, even the most spiritual world to process. Effectively, it's called Keser Elyon, the Keser of the world of Atzilus. Because we said last week that what's the idea of a crown? A crown sits on top of your head. Seemingly, what does the king need a crown for? The crown doesn't have any function. But from the crown comes a ha'ara, and that's what makes him a king. On this Hamshacha it says, Kishachin olav ha'anan. That the anan, the cloud, was resting on the Mishkan. It seems like it's darkness, but really it's bright. The idea of the glory of Hashem filled up the Mishkan. Parshas Vayikrah, my mole v'loy mila, ela mila vade dismali mikulam. The Zohar says, what does it mean that it was full? Not that it filled up. For sure that it was completely full of this light, of the glory of Hashem. If the simple meaning was just like the simple meaning that the glory of Hashem filled up the Mishkan, then the grammar should have said Mila, it filled up. It would imply that only the kavod filled up the Mishkan. So, because it says male doesn't mean that it filled up. Male became fully developed. That the glory of Hashem, this kavod became fully developed. Because it became fully developed, then it was able to be revealed in the Mishkan. In other words, what do you mean fully developed? This light needs to be processed before it can come into this world or into a Mishkan. Because it's such a powerful light. First it has to be processed. First it has to be mole. Once it's mole, it's full, then it could be processed. It could come to the Mishkan. The idea is, what's the idea of Kavod Hashem? That's Kvod is the glory, is the ray of his glory. That's the mid of Malchus. Which that's called Chochmatata, which that is the source of Biyah. We already explained like a month ago, we'll review it, that in general there are 4 worlds. There are 4 worlds, Atzilus, Abiyah. Now, the first world, Atzilus, abbreviation is Abiyah, as you can see, Abiyah. The first world is Atzilus. Atzilus is like a whole different ball game between all the other 3 worlds. Because Atzilus comes from the word Etzloi v'Samuchloi, it's close to Hashem. It's a very spiritually sensitive world. It's very conscious. When I say it's very spiritual, it's very conscious. And it's very aware that it's getting its energy and its chayes from Hashem, and it doesn't have ego, doesn't have that much yeshes at all. No yeshes. It's also etzli v'samachlei, is close to Hashem. So we have Malchus here. We have 2 levels. We have Chachmaila, and we have Malchus. From Malchus of Atzilus is what the next world is created from. But Malchus of Atzilus itself gets its energy from Chachma of Atzilus. You see that? So Chachma of Atzilus feeds the Malchus. Think about it in your own life. What is Chachma? Chachma is the conception of the idea. Malchus is peh, is discussing the idea. Right? So Atzilus is still when it's in your mind, it's not a practical idea. You have a vision, you want to build a building, you want to open a business, that's the Chachma. The Malchus is already able to, even if you're talking to yourself, but not Chachma and Bina, it's an idea in theory. Like the wise man said, between theory and reality, there's no difference. But in reality, there is a difference. So Malchus is peh. Malchus is ready when you're able to articulate it, even if you didn't articulate it yet. But it means it's fully developed, the idea, the business plan, whatever it is. You want to express your love. And then you have Biyah is ready. Biyah is ready when you're actually, it's leaving your body. It's Machshava Dibra Maisa. This is Machshava Dibra Maisa. So obviously Machshava is still part of you in a certain sense. But Dibra Maisa is already when you're ready discussing it, you're able to articulate it. So Malchus is feeding to everything else. Whatever you're going to talk about, whatever you're going to do, whatever you're going to think about in this business in a very practical way. In other words, Atzilus is thinking about it preconception. Before you have words for the idea, that's already Atzilus. In Bria, I already have formed words because the Malchus already feeds into it. So everything that's coming out afterwards, you can see the whole chart, is really feeding from Malchus because it's all coming from this one main idea. But Malchus is getting it all from Chachma because Malchus is only communicating what it received from Chachma. I hope that was well explained. If there are any questions, you can always ask me. And now, this is called Chachma Elah and Chachma Tata. We have Chachma Tata. Malchus is called Chachma Tata. This is called Chachma Elah. So, Chachma is called Chachma Elah, and Malchus is called Chachma Tata. Kaved Ilah. Chachma Ilah is also called Kaved Ilah, which Kaved Ilah, that's the when the Oren Tziv Baruch Hu is resting in actuality. Regarding this, Moshe asked Hashem, show me your kavod. I want to see your kavod. Should have asked him, show me your light. Why is he asking, show me your clouds, your kavod? Which kavod refers to a cloud which is blocking. He's saying, I want to see it with those special tinted glasses. So I don't get blinded. Give it. And this is what we say: blessed is the glory of Hashem, the kavod of Hashem from His place. That the level, the bechina of midas malchus is baruch hamemali kol almin. That's the malchus of Atzilus, which is memali kol almin. It's giving very specific communication to Biyah of how to extrapolate this main idea. It should be blessed. What does blessed means? It should be drawn down from its place. That's Chachma Elah, which is the root and the source of all brachas. Because again, it all starts in Chachma Elah. From Chachma Elah is the seed of the idea. Chachma Elah is the seed of the idea, and from there it gets drawn down into the other three worlds to draw down the blessings. So the blessings, this is the source, Mekara Bracha. So, Pirush Kved Hashem Alei. Pirush Zerah Shakavid Nismale Mimikayre Mimchinas Kved Ilah. That's what it means. Kved Hashem Mole doesn't mean that it filled up the Mishkan. Mole means it got fully filled up. It's like filling up your gas tank. You're filling it up from the reservoir that's under the gas station. Mole, you're filling up the whole Mishkan with the cover got filled up. From its source of Chachma, of Kavod Ilah, Chachma Ilah, Mishkan, because the cloud was resting on the Mishkan, what is a cloud? A cloud is makif, it's not pinimi, it's makif. It's like the cellular waves that's surrounding, it doesn't go inside on a pneumius, it's not nutrition like food that goes into your body. So now, because of that, Seviv Kalaman is expressed in Memali Kalaman. Inner energy, therefore full of the whole Mishkan. Therefore Moshe cannot enter the Mishkan. He couldn't come in. Why? He wasn't able to accept this energy. It was too powerful for him. Even though by Matan Torah, the Torah tells us that Moshe entered the cloud, and he went into the mountain. So the Zohar explains there's two types of clouds. The cloud by Har Sinai he was able to enter in, the cloud by the Mishkan he was not able to enter in. So what the Rebbe explained here is the idea of Yashas Cheshech Sisrei, that there's a darkness, when the darkness you feel in your life, when you built the Mishkan, you worked so hard, it wasn't easy. The Yitzharas didn't go up, and you built the Mishkan, and you donated, you built the Krashim, and you have the ideas in your own personal life. Like the Alter Rebbe explained how to do that in your personal life, through Ramach say, not doing the loisase, and you're expecting a big light, a big oir. And it doesn't say who's talking, it says Vayikra al Moshe. The Aleph is small. And there's a Kved Hashem, there's a cloud. Instead, you're expecting a light. Instead of a light, the cloud comes. Says the Alter Rebbe, because it's such a big oir, that's why there's a cloud. It's like those shade glasses, so you, yeah. Base. Therefore it says, and he called to Moshe, this kriya is a ray and a hashpa to Moshe. In order that he should be able to go ascend and go up to the El Mayed. Not sure what this Rosh Teva stands for. In the pasuk that it says one called to the other, and he said Kadesh. Tirgem Yonason translates that the malachim they accept one from another. Kaddish, and they say holy. How does Targum translate the word kriya, calling? The idea of Kabbalah, accepting. So they give to each other a hamshacha. The Rebbe says the Targum is right, because literally calling is the opposite of Mekabel. Calling means I'm sending a message. Kabbalah means I'm accepting a message. Says the Alter Rebbe, the Targum is right. That's the only way to translate Vikara in this context. Why? I cannot explain it according to the simple meaning. If it means they're just calling each other, like you call your friends, come, let's go to a party, let's start singing together. Why does Gabriel have to quote to Michal and Michal to Gabriel? Because this kriya is the idea of Kabbalah. They accept from each other. Each one gives the other malach a hashpa. They shine an energy from their own energy to the other malach. And through this, each malach can say 3 times Kaddish. What's the idea of Kaddish? Kaddish is, the word Kaddish means separated. And when they say Kaddish, it's the idea of Kleis and Nefesh, that they're, even though a malach is spiritual, but like we say today in Rish Chodesh, that Hashem makes malachim from fire and wind. So they have a certain sense, they have a body. They want to leave their body, so to speak, and go to their source. That's the idea of Yotzim Bashir. Through a song, they have Kleis and Nefesh. Michal, what's his Kleis HaNefesh? It's through love to Hashem. Gabriel b'yira, and Gabriel is with fear of Hashem. If so, Michal can only say Kaddish one time, then he's done. Tainu Kleis HaNefesh b'fchinas Ava. You have Kleis HaNefesh on the level of Ava. Gabriel pamachas Kaddish b'yira, and Gabriel can only say one time Kaddish in Yira. In order that each one should say 3 times Kaddish. In other words, to this that each one calls to each other. It's nimshach dashpa from one to another. That's the idea of combining different modes together, the mode of love and the mode of fear. Because in general, there are 3 categories. There are 3 categories of chesed, which is Michal, Gabriel is Gevura, and Rafal is Tiferes. Through this that they give to each other, each one can say 3 times Kaddish. So too, the idea of Vayikra Moshe here also means a Kabbalah, not that he's calling him. It's a Kabbalah. It's drawing down a energy and a light into Moshe, a ha'ara, a ray. This is really what we explained already a few weeks ago. In other words, and this is actually, the truth is that the medrash I brought before actually is very apropos to here. I thought it wasn't, but it's very interesting when it says that. Let me pull it up quickly. It says what happened with that big. So Adam Rishon had a big Adam Rishon had a big aleph. What was the end of that aleph? How did it end up for him? How beneficial was it? That's why sometimes you see a person who you feel is doing better than you. This is from B'tachan also. You think he has more than you. But sometimes the Shar B'tachan says, the Eibush Shemer Oshrei L'Bayla of L'Rasai. Hashem gives a person a lot of money, gives him a lot of but the is too much for him and he can't handle it. And it's actually for his detrimental for him. So what does the Medrash say in the In Yaakov? Really, it's interesting Medrash. Adam Rishon was so large that he was from one end of the world to the other end of the world. Shenemar, like says in the pasuk, from one end of the heaven to the other end of the heaven. Hashem made him smaller. Maybe it's not. I didn't read the whole Medrash, so I didn't have. But the point is that he got Adam Rishon was. We'll keep that for a moment. But Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem gave him a small aleph. Why give him a small aleph? It's not because it's a choshech. It's because he's giving him now a big ur. And that's something which I saw myself in my own life, very interestingly, that there's really two modes you can live your life on. A mullah person, the Rebbe speaks about this in different ways, but a person, let's say for example, you give tzedakah. And I had that personal experience, give tzedakah, and then after you give tzedakah, your panasa gets worse. Comes the aleph ze'era. It's Vayikrah, you don't know who's talking to you. Is it Hashem or it's the opposite? What's going on? And what the Eibush is saying is that till now was a smaller ur. It was like a ur al piteva. Because you gave tzedakah, you came on such a high level. Now Hashem wants to give you a bigger ur. That ur, it's yashas choshech sisa. You have to have a filter because it's so powerful. That's why it starts off very small. So Moshe Rabbeinu, what's the idea of a small aleph? And that's the idea what we said. We discussed last year, I believe, last week in Torah in Likutie. The Alter Rebbe introduced this idea of aleph. That aleph has three letters: aleph, lamed, and fei. Which fei is also like a fei, which spells the word pele. They're interchangeable. Let's say end of fei and a fei is the same thing. Aleph, which means one, which also means alefcha, means a chieftain, means an officer. Also from the word pele. Pele comes from the word pelois, a miracle. Pele means something which. What's a miracle? A miracle is something that I cannot fathom. It's unbelievable. Something which I cannot figure out how to do myself, and it's something which blows my mind. It says the Alter Rebbe, Aleph Eisi Pele. Aleph has the same letters as Pele. Which is higher than understanding. Aleph also comes from the Lashon Alefcha. I'll teach you. If I could teach you, I'll teach you wisdom means that I could teach it to you. But the same letters are Pele, which means it's not explainable. He explains this is Pshat. The Pshat is that Pele is the source of all Chachma. I can't teach you everything, but I could switch it around. When you switch around the combination of the letters, it shows that you're diluting the energy. So I switch it around from Pele to Aleph, and then I explain you a small Aleph from this big Pele. The Aleph is in Kesser that's higher than Chachma. So till now was a small Aleph. Then there's Aleph from the big letters. The level of Kesser, say how it's in its core. Moshe cannot go into such an Aleph. But the small Aleph, which that's after it comes to the Tzimtzum, and through its filter down, you're wearing the special sunglasses. The teacher gave a mashal, so he didn't explain you the idea fully on its own. He diluted it. It's like, for example, drinking concentrated orange juice. You have concentrated orange juice in the can. You drink it concentrated, it's too strong for you. You have to dilute it with water. Aleph Zeira. And then he was able to come to the Yom That's what I was wanting to bring from that Medrash. I thought I saw in the Medrash that before the Chet Adam was in the Aleph. It was that the Medrash said that before he would send the idea of a big Aleph of Adam is because he was great physically and spiritually and psychologically. His light, he was able to see from one end of the world. He was much larger, big Ashmias. And then after the Chet, that Aleph was lessened. Pasuk, Masha Hayakvar Nikrish May. Move in another direction is bar. Fine. So that's how we explained it before already.